She was closing the cafe at midnight when a billionaire CEO knocked and said, "One last coffee." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to tonight's story. She was closing the cafe at midnight when she heard a slow, steady knock on the glass door. The rain had been falling since evening, washing the quiet streets of the city into silver reflections. Inside, the last light glowed soft and golden against the dark windows. Maya brushed crumbs off the counter, wiped the espresso machine, and whispered to herself, "Almost done. Another day survived." No. Her hands trembled slightly from exhaustion. She had been working double shifts all week, trying to save enough money to keep her small apartment. The knock came again, 3 gentle taps. Maya turned. Outside stood a man in a dark coat, rain dripping from his hair onto his shoulders. He looked tall, maybe mid-30s, his face half hidden beneath the streetlight. He smiled faintly through the glass and mouthed, "One last coffee?" For a moment, she hesitated. The clock on the wall said 12:01. The sign already flipped to closed, but there was something in his expression, tired but kind. Against her better judgment, Maya unlocked the door. The bell above it chimed softly as he stepped inside, carrying the smell of rain and cold air with him. "Thank you," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I promise I will not keep you long." "It is fine," Maya answered, forcing a small smile. "What will it be?" "Whatever you recommend." Her smile grew a little more real. "Then you are getting my last espresso of the night." She moved behind the counter, her motion smooth from habit. Steam hissed as she pulled the shot. The sound filled the silence between them. When she looked up, he was watching her hands with quiet fascination. "You run this place alone?" he asked. "Only at night," she said. "The owner plans to sell soon, so I take every shift I can before it is gone." "That sounds hard." She shrugged. "Hard keeps the lights on." He chuckled softly, something in his eyes warming. "That is one way to put it." When she placed the cup in front of him, he lifted it slowly, inhaling the aroma before taking a sip. His shoulders relaxed. "This is good," he murmured. "Better than anything I had all week." "Busy job?" she asked. He nodded. "You could say that. Long hours, too many screens." Maya laughed quietly. "You sound like everyone in this city." The rain tapped against the window. For a moment, the world outside seemed far away. He set a $10 bill on the counter. "Keep the change," he said. She glanced at the note, about to protest, but he was already reaching for the door. "Thank you for letting me in," he said, turning back with that same half-smile. Most people would have pretended not to hear the knock. Maya looked at him, the faint light catching the rain on his coat. "I think everyone deserves one last coffee," she said softly. He paused, as if her words had struck somewhere deeper than she could imagine. Then he nodded and stepped into the night. The bell chimed once, then silence. Maya stood there for a long time, staring at the empty doorway, not knowing she had just served the chief executive officer of one of the biggest companies in New York, and that this simple midnight kindness would change her life forever. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the thin curtains of Maya's small apartment. The sound of traffic below mixed with the hum of an old refrigerator. She sat on the edge of her bed, still half lost in the memory of the man from last night, the stranger who had asked for one last coffee. Her apartment was barely large enough for a twin bed, a folding table, and a shelf that sagged under the weight of coffee mugs she had collected over the years. She kept one mug apart, chipped at the rim, the one her mother had given her before she passed away. It reminded her why she worked so hard. Maya had been working at the Moonlight Café for almost 2 years. The pay barely covered rent, and her landlord had already warned her twice about late payments. She lived frugally, instant noodles, thrift store clothes, and second-hand books. Still, she found beauty in small things. The sound of steam from the espresso machine, the smell of roasted beans, the warmth of strangers, sharing stories across a counter. That morning, she opened her sketchbook, its pages filled with drawings of coffee cups, tiny shop corners, and handwritten quotes. At the top of the first page, in her careful handwriting, were the words, Someday, I will open my own cafe, a place that feels like home. She smiled faintly, then closed it and tucked it back into her bag. Dreams did not pay the bills, she thought. By 9 o'clock, she was back at the cafe. The air was thick with the smell of sugar and cinnamon. Her coworker, Rosa, was already there, tying her apron. "You look tired," Rosa said. Maya shrugged. "Could not sleep. I kept thinking about the man from last night." "The late customer?" Rosa asked, teasing. "Was he cute?" Maya rolled her eyes. "He was polite, and soaked from the rain. That is all." "Polite and mysterious," Rosa said with a grin. "Sounds like a start of something." Maya laughed softly and began setting up the counter. "The only start I need is a second job," she replied. Around noon, the cafe filled with regulars, office workers, students, delivery drivers. Maya worked fast, greeting everyone with her usual warmth. Her hands moved with practiced rhythm. Pour, serve, smile, repeat. Yet, every time the bell above the door rang, she found herself glancing up, expecting to see the man in the dark coat again. He never came. During her break, she stepped outside with her sketchbook. Sitting on the back steps, she watched the city move, taxis rushing, people talking on phones, a street musician playing a slow tune. She turned a blank page and began sketching a storefront with soft lights and shelves of old books. At the bottom she wrote, "Moonlight Café, a place for late souls." She sighed. "If only," she murmured. That night after closing, Maya lingered a little longer than usual. The chairs were stacked, the lights dimmed, but she stayed behind the counter, staring at the reflection of the empty cafe in the glass. "One last coffee," she whispered, echoing his words. It felt lonely when no one answered. Across town, in a penthouse that overlooked the city, Ethan Ward stood by a floor-to-ceiling window. The lights of New York glimmered below like scattered stars. He held a cup of coffee, one he had brewed himself, though it tasted nothing like hers. The warmth in it was missing, replaced by silence. He could not stop thinking about her, the tired waitress who had opened the door when everyone else would have ignored the knock. Her voice had been steady but kind. Her words, "Everyone deserves one last coffee," had stayed with him through the entire night. His assistant, Claire, entered the room quietly. "Sir, the board meeting is in 20 minutes, she said. Ethan nodded absently. "Cancel it." Claire hesitated. "Cancel it? You never cancel." "I know," he said, his gaze fixed on the skyline. "But tonight, I need to think." He turned away from the window and walked toward his desk, where a sleek silver laptop blinked with dozens of unread emails. He closed it with a sigh. For years, success had been his entire identity, building WardTech from a college project into a multi-billion-dollar company. But somewhere along the way, he had lost the sense of connection that made it all meaningful. Maya had looked at him without knowing his name, without caring about his wealth. She had treated him like a person, not a headline. That was what unsettled him the most. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the $10 bill she had given back with his change. Her handwriting was faintly visible on the receipt beneath it. "Thank you, have a safe night." He smiled slightly, then whispered to himself, "Maybe I will have one more cup of coffee." "I do." And somewhere, across the city, Maya turned off the last light in the cafe, unaware that her kindness had already started a quiet storm in a billionaire's heart. 3 days passed before Maya saw him again. It was late afternoon, the kind of warm golden hour that made the cafe windows glow like honey. Business had been slow that day. She was cleaning tables, humming softly to a song on the radio, when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up. There he was, the man from that rainy night, wearing a simple gray sweater this time, instead of a soaked coat. His hair was dry, neatly combed back, and there was no sign of exhaustion on his face. Yet his eyes carried the same calm kindness that had made her open the door. For a moment, she froze. Then she smiled, surprised by her own reaction. "You again," she said. "I thought you were just a one-night story." He smiled back. "Maybe I liked your coffee too much to stay away." You came all this way for coffee?" she asked. He nodded lightly. "Among other things. I never caught your name." "Maya," she said, brushing her apron. "And you are?" "Ethan," he replied after a small pause. "I work in tech, software mostly." The word tech sounded vague, but she did not question it. She had met plenty of engineers who came by after work. "So, Ethan from tech?" she teased. "Same order?" He laughed quietly. "Yes. 1 espresso, the way you make it." "Go." As she prepared the cup, Ethan watched her with quiet curiosity. There was something peaceful about the way she moved, precise but gentle. When she handed him the drink, their fingers brushed for just a second. He did not expect the small spark that followed. "Still raining?" she asked, glancing toward the window. "Not today," he said. "But the city feels the same. Rushing, busy, always in a hurry." "Tell me about it," she said with a sigh. "I spend all day serving people who look like they are already somewhere else." "And where do you wish you were?" he asked. Maya hesitated. "Somewhere quieter, maybe. My own cafe one day. A place where people stop rushing." He smiled. "That sounds like something worth building." She chuckled softly. "Maybe for someone with more money and fewer bills." Ethan wanted to say he could make it happen in a heartbeat, but he stayed silent. That was not why he was here. He wanted to be seen, just once, without his last name or title. They talked for nearly an hour. He told her small pieces of truth. That he worked too much, that he missed home-cooked food, that he often stayed up late thinking about decisions he could not undo. Maya listened, nodding, offering warmth instead of advice. When he finally stood to leave, she said, "You are different from most of the customers here." "How so?" "They always look at their phones. You actually look at people." "Oh," he smiled at that. "Maybe I just found something worth looking at." Maya felt her cheeks warm. She laughed it off, waving him toward the door. "Come back when you need another cup." He nodded. "I will." After he left, Rosa came out from the back and raised an eyebrow. That was a long coffee break for him. Maya shook her head, hiding her smile. "He is harmless. Just someone who likes espresso." Rosa smirked. "You sure?" "Positive," Maya said, but her voice held a trace of doubt. That night, as she counted the register, she noticed something unusual. A $10 bill sat on the counter, folded neatly in half. On the edge of it, in small handwriting, were 3 words. "Thank you, Maya." Her heart skipped. He had remembered her name. Across town, Ethan sat in his car parked along the river. The city lights shimmered on the surface of the water. He had not felt this kind of quiet in years. For the first time in a long time, he was not thinking about profits, deadlines, or board meetings. He was thinking about the way her voice softened when she talked about her dream, and how her eyes lit up when she described the warmth of her imaginary cafe. He pulled out his phone, opened his calendar full of meetings, and slowly deleted 2 of them. Then he looked at the clock on the dashboard. It was close to midnight. He whispered to himself, "Maybe tomorrow, one more visit." The next morning, Maya woke up earlier than usual. She stopped at a flower stand near her apartment and bought a single sunflower, something bright to place on the counter. She did not admit it to herself, but she hoped he might come again. When the bell above the cafe door finally rang that afternoon, she looked up from wiping the counter. Her breath caught. He was there, holding 2 cups of takeout coffee this time. "I brought one for you," he said with that easy smile. "I figured it as my turn." And as the sunlight streamed through the glass, Maya realized that what had started as a midnight mistake was beginning to feel like something far more significant. Over the next few weeks, Ethan became a quiet part of Maya's world. He visited the cafe almost every other evening, sometimes staying only long enough for 1 espresso, other times helping her close up when the night grew late. They fell into an easy rhythm. She would wipe the tables while he stacked chairs. Then they would sit at the counter, sharing stories that had nothing to do with money or titles. She told him about growing up in a small town, about her father teaching her how to draw on napkins during slow nights at their diner. Ethan told her, carefully, about the company, without ever saying how big it really was, about sleepless nights and decisions that cost him peace. One evening he arrived earlier than usual, carrying a small box wrapped in brown paper. "What is this?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Consider it a trade," he said. "You give me good coffee. I give you something better than that broken grinder you keep fighting with." Inside was a brand new handheld coffee grinder, elegant and sturdy. Maya's mouth fell open. "Ethan, this must have cost." "Do not worry about that," he interrupted softly. "Think of it as an investment in your dream." Her heart tightened. "You remember that?" I remember everything you say, he replied. That night, they stayed long after closing. The air smelled of roasted beans and faint rain from the street outside. Maya made him a cappuccino with the new grinder, and laughed when he sprinkled too much cinnamon on top. It was the first time she had seen him laugh, really laugh. Not the polite kind reserved for meetings or strangers. He looked around the empty cafe. You know, he said, this place feels like what the city forgets warmth. She smiled, tracing the rim of her cup. That is what I want to build. A place where people stop rushing. Ethan nodded. Then you should. With what money, she asked, half joking. With what courage, he corrected. Money follows people who dare to care. She tilted her head. That sounds like something you would read on a poster. He chuckled. Maybe I made it up just now. Outside, thunder rolled, and a flash of lightning lit the wet glass. Without thinking, Maya stood and pulled down the blinds. Ethan helped her lock the door, and for a moment, the two stood side by side, framed in the dim glow of the sign. There was a quiet that was not awkward but steady, like a pause that mattered. Maya looked up and said softly, You never told me where you live. He hesitated. Upper East Side, near the park. That must be nice, she said. I rent a place above a laundromat. The hum of dryers is my lullaby. He smiled gently. Sometimes, simple sounds are the ones we miss most. When she looked at him again, she caught something unguarded in his eyes. Loneliness, maybe, or regret. She wanted to ask more, but the clock struck midnight. As Ethan stepped toward the door, she said, You will come back tomorrow, right? He paused, his hand on the handle. If you promise to make the same coffee. I promise, she said. He left, the bell above the door ringing once, leaving her alone with a warmth she could not quite name. That night, Maya sat by the window of her small apartment, sketching. On the page, she drew 2 coffee cups beside a rain-streaked window. Beneath them, she wrote 3 simple words. Kindness builds bridges. Across the city, Ethan looked at his phone, scrolling past hundreds of unread messages. Then he set it down and whispered to himself, Tomorrow, I will tell her the truth. Maybe she deserves to know who I really am. The next evening, Maya was wiping the counter when the television above the bar flickered to life. The cafe had almost emptied for the night. A local news channel was running a live broadcast from a downtown hotel ballroom. The anchor's voice carried clearly through the quiet cafe. Breaking news from the annual City Tech Gala. Ethan Ward, Chief Executive Officer of Ward Tech Industries, has just announced a multi-million-dollar partnership aimed at rebuilding small local businesses affected by the recent economic downturn. Maya froze, her cloth still in hand. On the screen stood Ethan in a tuxedo, smiling as flashbulbs went off around him. The same gentle eyes, the same quiet voice. Her chest tightened. The man who had stood in her cafe, who had helped her clean tables, who had given her a coffee grinder, was standing under chandeliers, surrounded by executives and cameras. Rosa walked out from the kitchen. Wait. Is that? Maya's voice broke slightly. Yes, that is him. A wave of heat and disbelief swept through her. She could hear the sound of her own heartbeat, louder than the rain tapping the glass outside. When the doorbell chimed, she turned sharply. Ethan stood there, still in the tuxedo from the event, his tie slightly undone. Maya, he said softly, I wanted to tell you, Tell me what? She interrupted, her voice trembling. That you are a billionaire pretending to be some tired stranger who needed coffee? It was never a game, he said, stepping closer. I needed to feel normal again. You made me remember what that felt like. Normal? She repeated bitterly. You lied. You stood here night after night, listening to my dreams, and you never said who you were. Maya, please. She shook her head. You do not get to say my name like that. Her eyes glistened. You bought everything else in this city. You do not get to buy trust. Before he could answer, she turned away, locking the register, her hands trembling. Ethan stood in silence, then placed a folded envelope on the counter. I am sorry, he whispered. You deserve the truth. When he left, the cafe felt colder than ever. Maya stared at the envelope for a long moment before turning off the lights. Inside, Her reflection looked back at her through the glass, tired, heartbroken, and smaller than she had ever felt. Rain poured again that night as Maya walked home, her shoes soaking through with every step. The city lights blurred behind the curtain of water, and her heart felt heavier than her drenched clothes. By the time she reached her apartment, she was shivering. She dropped her keys on the table and stared at the envelope Ethan had left. She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Maya, you were the first person in years who looked at me and saw more than a company name. I wanted to tell you the truth, but I was afraid that once I did, everything real between us would disappear. You reminded me what it feels like to be human. Whatever you think of me now, know that I am truly sorry. Ethan. Tears burned behind her eyes. She folded the letter back into its envelope and pressed it against her chest. Then why did you lie? She whispered. The next morning, she returned to the cafe early, hoping work would quiet her mind. But when she arrived, the landlord was waiting at the door. Maya, I am sorry, he said. The place has been sold. New management takes over next week. Her stomach dropped. Sold? To who? He shook his head. I do not know. Some private buyer. Big company name on the papers. She walked inside, every step echoing through the space she loved. The tables, the counter, even the smell of roasted beans, all of it felt like pieces of her dream being taken away. That night, she sat in the dark corner of the cafe, long after closing. The rain drummed steadily outside, and the neon sign buzzed faintly. She looked around one last time, then whispered, "Goodbye, Moonlight Cafe." Across town, in his office tower, Ethan stood before the glass wall overlooking the skyline. His assistant, Claire, entered with a tense look. The board is using the gala incident to question your leadership, she said. They claim your personal life is a distraction. Ethan exhaled slowly. Let them. They are not wrong. Sir, if you want to protect your position, you need to issue a statement, something to control the story. He shook his head. No press, no lies. I caused the hurt. I will fix it the only way I know how. Claire frowned. And how is that? By giving her back what I took, he said quietly. That same night, he drafted documents transferring the ownership of the cafe building to a new name, Maya's. He signed it without hesitation, his pen trembling only once. When he was done, he stared out at the storm. Money can rebuild walls, he murmured, but not trust. The next morning, Maya received a sealed envelope delivered to the cafe door. Inside was a deed, her name printed clearly at the top. For a long time she stood there, unable to breathe. She looked toward the window, rain still falling, and whispered, "What are you trying to do, Ethan Ward?" The only answer was the sound of thunder rolling across the city. For 2 days, Maya did not touch the deed that bore her name. She kept it in a drawer beneath her sketchbook, afraid that if she looked at it too long, it would disappear like a dream. The idea that Ethan had bought the cafe building and transferred it to her felt impossible. It was too much, too generous, too heavy. On the third morning, she returned to the cafe determined to face whatever was coming. As she unlocked the door, she found a man waiting by the entrance in a dark suit. "Miss Carter?" he asked. "Maya Brooks," she corrected, frowning. "My apologies. I am here on behalf of Mr. Ethan Ward. He asked me to deliver this invitation." He handed her a sealed envelope embossed with gold. Inside was a formal card that read, "The Ward Foundation presents The Art of Everyday Kindness, a private exhibition celebrating small acts that change lives." The address was downtown, at the same hotel where the gala had taken place. The event was scheduled for the coming Friday night. Maya's heart thudded. She almost tore the card in half. But curiosity overpowered anger. What was he planning now? That evening, she sat by her window staring at the invitation. Her mind raced between resentment and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, he wanted to make things right, not with money, but with truth. When Friday arrived, she put on her simplest dress, the one she used to wear for job interviews. Her reflection in the mirror looked unsure but determined. "You are not going for him," she told herself. "You are going for answers." Oh. The hotel lobby shimmered with gold and glass. Maya felt out of place the moment she stepped inside. Guests in suits and gowns moved through the hall, sipping champagne beneath glittering chandeliers. A large banner hung at the center, "The Art of Everyday Kindness." A young hostess approached. "Miss Maya Brooks?" she asked with a smile. Maya nodded hesitantly. "Right this way, please." The hostess led her into the ballroom. As she entered, the chatter around her softened. Dozens of framed sketches lined the walls, her sketches. Pages from her sketchbook had been reproduced. Every line and coffee stain perfectly preserved. In the center stood a small sign, "From the collection of Maya Brooks, the dream that built a cafe." Her knees almost gave out. "No," she whispered. "How did he—" "Because you left your sketchbook behind," a familiar voice said behind her. She turned. Ethan stood a few steps away, dressed simply this time. No tie, no cameras. "I did not buy the cafe for pity," he said quietly. "I bought it to return what was already yours. This exhibition, it is yours too. You inspired it." Her eyes filled with tears. "You had no right to use my drawings." "You are right," he said. "But I needed you to see how powerful your dream was. People needed to see it too. And I needed to prove something to them, and to myself." "To yourself?" she asked, voice trembling. "That I could give without taking. That love is not measured by ownership." For a long moment, silence filled the space between them. Guests watched from a respectful distance, sensing something deeper than art unfolding. Maya finally said, "You think you can fix everything with grand gestures?" Ethan shook his head. "No, but I can start with honesty. The cafe, the exhibition, the deed, they are yours. No conditions, no repayment." She looked around the room, her sketches glowing under the lights. For the first time, she saw her dream reflected back at her, real, alive, and beautiful. When she turned back to Ethan, her voice was softer. "You did all this just to say sorry?" He smiled faintly. "No, Maya, I did all this because I believe in you." And though she did not answer, the tears in her eyes said what words could not. The applause in the ballroom slowly faded as the guests began to wander through the gallery. Maya stood quietly near her sketches, still trying to process what had happened. She could feel the weight of 100 emotions pressing against her heart: anger, disbelief, gratitude, and something softer she was afraid to name. Ethan stayed a few steps behind, giving her space. He looked different that night, not like the billionaire from the news or the tired stranger from that first rainy evening, but like a man stripped of armor. When she finally turned to face him, her voice was steady but low. "You really did all this?" He nodded. "Every piece was yours. I only built the room to hold it." Maya shook her head. "You should not have gone this far. People think this is some romantic gesture." "Maybe it is," he said gently. "But it is also a truth. You changed how I see the world, Maya. You reminded me that kindness still matters more than reputation." She crossed her arms, still unsure whether to smile or cry. "You talk like you want forgiveness, but you never asked for it." "I am not asking for forgiveness," he said. "I am asking for a chance to do better with or without you." His honesty disarmed her. For the first time since the night of the reveal, she saw no calculation in his eyes, only sincerity. The noise of the crowd faded to a soft murmur as he reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small folded receipt. She recognized it instantly. It was the one from the first night, the one with her handwriting that said, "Thank you. Have a safe night." "I kept it," he said. "It reminded me that someone once opened a door for me when I did not deserve it." Her breath caught. "You are unbelievable," she whispered, though her tone had softened. He smiled. "Only because you believed first." For a long moment, they simply stood there, the hum of the gallery surrounding them. The light above flickered across her sketches, reflecting in their eyes like tiny stars. Finally, Maya exhaled and said, "You really think a few kind words and an art show can fix what you broke?" "No," Ethan said. "But I hope they can show you who I truly am. I do not want to hide anymore." Something inside her shifted. Maybe it was the way he said it. Or maybe it was because she could see the exhaustion in his face, the same exhaustion she had once seen through a rain-soaked window. "Ethan," she said quietly, "you are still a stranger in many ways." "Then let me start again," he said. "No lies this time. Just me." He extended his hand. She stared at it for a few seconds before taking it slowly. The simple gesture felt heavier than any promise. As the evening ended, Maya stepped out of the hotel and into the cool night air. Ethan followed a few steps behind. The city buzzed around them, bright and alive. She turned to him one last time. "If I come back to the cafe, It'll be on my terms." He nodded. "It should be. And if I ever let you in again," she continued, "it will be because you earned it, not because you bought it." "I would not want it any other way," he said. They stood there beneath the streetlight, the same kind of glow that had framed their first meeting. And though no words were spoken after that, the quiet between them felt like the beginning of something new, something honest. As she walked away, Ethan looked down at the $10 bill folded in his hand and smiled. For the first time, he understood what it meant to give without expecting anything in return. 1 year later, the sign above the door of Moonlight Café shone again. The paint was fresh, the windows clean, and the soft hum of jazz filled the air. The smell of roasted beans drifted down the street, mixing with spring rain and sunlight. Inside, the walls were lined with sketches, Maya's sketches, each one framed with care. A small crowd filled the cafe that morning for the grand reopening. Neighbors, friends, and strangers who had followed her story came to celebrate. A banner above the counter read, "Kindness builds bridges." Maya stood behind the counter, wearing her apron, smiling the way she always had, bright, tired, but full of heart. Rosa waved from the corner. "You did it," she said. "Your dream came true." Maya laughed softly. "Our dream. You were here through every spill and every late night." The bell above the door chimed. The sound made her heart jump before she even looked up. Ethan stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. He wore a simple gray sweater, just like the one from the day they first really spoke. Maya met his eyes. "You found your way back." He smiled gently. "I promised I would, remember? One last coffee." He walked toward her, and the noise in the cafe seemed to fade into the background. He handed her one of the cups. Their hands brushed, and for a moment, time slowed. "I did not come to take credit," he said quietly. "This place belongs to you. I just wanted to see it alive again." "You helped make it possible," she replied. "That counts for something." Ethan shook his head. "It counts because you never gave up. You kept believing in warmth, even when I forgot what it felt like." "Oh?" Maya looked around the cafe. Children laughed near the window seats. An old couple shared a slice of pie. The espresso machine hissed softly in the corner. Everything she had once drawn in her sketchbook now existed, alive and real. She turned back to him. "So what now, Ethan Ward?" He smiled. "Now, I order a coffee like everyone else and try not to ruin your sales record." She laughed. "Then sit down. The first one is on the house." "Oh." As she prepared his espresso, he watched quietly, the same way he had that first night. When she placed the cup in front of him, she noticed something on the counter, a small velvet box. He opened it, revealing a simple silver ring. "No titles, no grand gestures," he said softly. "Just a promise to keep showing up, 1 cup at a time." Maya blinked back tears. "You are serious?" "I have never been more certain," he said. "You turned a mistake into a miracle. You turned me into a man who believes again." She took the ring, her hand trembling slightly. "Then let us keep building bridges, one kindness at a time." The crowd around them began to clap as if the world itself had been waiting for that moment. Later, when the cafe quieted, Maya stood at the window, watching the rain begin to fall again. She looked at Ethan sitting at his favorite corner table, reading the newspaper, and smiled. Her voice was soft but sure. "Some people walk into your life by mistake," she said. "But sometimes, those mistakes are exactly what destiny looks like." And outside, beneath the glow of the Moonlight Café sign, a new story began, one built not on wealth or lies, but on warmth, honesty, and the simple magic of one last coffee.